People always talk about childhood like it's supposed to be this soft focus montage. Riding bikes, eating popsicles on the porch, summers that feel endless. Mine wasn't like that. Mine was loud. Not because of chaos, but because of the whispers, the stares, the jokes that weren't actually jokes. The way kids in school looked at the map-shaped white patches on my skin like they were something contagious, something wrong, something that could swallow them whole the second they got too close. I learned early that nothing travels faster than a rumor, except a cruel comment said loud enough for everyone to hear. She's turning into a ghost. Ew, don't sit next to her. Her skin is dying, bro. That's why it looks like that. Do you think she feels pain where she's white? My mom said she has a disease. Kids said that to my face. Adults said worse behind my back. Vitiligo, a non-harmful skin condition. Millions have it. But to the town I grew up in, a beige conservative suburb in Illinois, it made me a walking target, something to poke at, something to fear, something to mock. I spent years sitting in bathroom stalls during lunch, tracing the borders of the white patches on my hands like they were some map that could lead me to a better life. A life where I didn't feel like I had to be hidden to be safe. You know when you hear something enough times, you start believing it? That was me. Everyone told me vitiligo would consume my mental health, that someday I'd break. And honestly, for a long time, I thought they were right. My mom used to wipe off my tears with her thumb and whisper, "Baby, God gave you skin that tells a story. One day people will read it and be inspired." But my dad, he was quieter, protective, but in a way that made me feel like he was always waiting for something to go wrong. Like he expected the world to crush me, so he hovered as if preparing for impact. Meanwhile, my older sister, Elle, perfect, golden-skinned, effortlessly pretty, floated through life as if she were born knowing where all the trap doors were. She wasn't cruel exactly, but she lived in a different world. One where people didn't stare the second she walked into a room. One where she wasn't an example of anything. One where she could just exist. I used to resent her for that. Sometimes I still do. But the funny thing about pain, it doesn't stay pain forever. It shifts into something else. Hunger, drive, fire. By the time I hit my 20s, the part of me that used to shrink had evolved into something sharper. I didn't want to disappear anymore. I wanted to be seen. On my terms. And I got my first chance the day I met Ethan. Ethan Grant. The man who would eventually become my husband. The man who would leave me with a newborn baby and a mortgage that felt like a noose. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Back then, he was the mysterious new guy in town, the type that made girls in coffee shops suddenly need a refill. Tall, expensive-looking hair, smile like he knew secrets. He didn't stare at my skin like everyone else did. When he looked at me, his eyes didn't flinch, didn't widen, didn't assess. He just looked. And for someone who'd spent her whole life being analyzed like a specimen, that felt intoxicating. We dated fast, fell in love even faster. He made me feel chosen at a time when I didn't even think I deserved it. He told me my skin was art, which is the kind of line that would make me roll my eyes now, but back then, God, I clung to it like a lifeline. I was 24 when he proposed, 25 when I moved into his condo in Chicago, 26 when I realized marriage is a lot quieter than the movies like it seem, and 27 when everything fell apart. But before the collapse, there was the slow build, the tiny red flags I ignored because I was too afraid to lose the first man who made me feel seen. He'd get controlling in ways I brushed off. If you're going to post pictures online, at least let me approve them. Don't wear that dress, baby. People will stare at your chest, not your skin. I want them admiring the right parts of you. Maybe tone down the makeup. You don't need to draw more attention. Don't hang out with Maya. She hypes you up too much. You get unrealistic ideas. Let's keep our finances simple. I'll handle the money. We don't need a joint account. Trust me. My parents don't really get your situation, so just try to keep it low-key when we visit. And the worst one said so soft I almost believed it wasn't meant to hurt. When my post hit 1 million views, I wasn't even wearing makeup. I had Ava in one arm, a half-burnt grilled cheese on the counter, and my hair in a messy bun that was basically held together by prayer. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't staged, it wasn't even intentional. I was just tired, exhausted to my bones, and I'd filmed a raw video about growing up with vitiligo, about how people treated me like I was broken, about feeling invisible, and then choosing to be seen anyway. I uploaded it, tossed my phone onto the couch, and forgot about it altogether. Hours later, the notifications started. Thousands of comments, hundreds of thousands of likes, DMs from girls telling me they cried, moms telling me they showed my video to their daughters, young men saying they never understood what vitiligo was, and now they did. Even influencers I'd admired for years were reposting my story. I should have been thrilled. I should have been screaming, dancing, calling every person who ever made me feel small and laughing in their face. Instead, I just stared at my phone, with Ava asleep on my chest, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. A real, pulsing, living kind of hope that buzzed under my skin like electricity. That was the exact moment someone knocked on my door. It wasn't a polite knock. It wasn't the neighbor's kid selling candles for a school fundraiser. It wasn't the landlord. He always banged like he was collecting souls instead of rent. This knock was slow, heavy, intentional. Like whoever was on the other side knew I was home, knew I'd answer, knew the right rhythm to make my heart drop straight into my stomach. Ava stirred. I froze. The knock came again, 3 times. 3 slow, deliberate taps. "Who's there?" I called out, keeping my voice steady even though my pulse was going feral. Silence. I moved closer, pressed my eye to the peephole, and nearly stopped breathing. It was my sister, Elle. Yeah, my golden-skinned, Instagram-perfect, suburban princess of an older sister. The last person I expected. The person who told me, when I was 15, "You should cover your patches more. People stare." The person who said, when I told her I was pregnant, "Are you sure Ethan is really ready for a kid?" The person who didn't even bother to check on me in the hospital after I gave birth alone. What the hell was she doing here? I unlocked the door slowly. "Elle?" I whispered. "What? How? Why?" She pushed inside before I could finish. "Lock the door." "What?" "Lock it!" "Elle, what's going on?" "Naya," she hissed, turning toward me with eyes so wide they didn't even look like hers. "I said, lock the damn door." So I did. She stood in the middle of my tiny living room like she didn't recognize the concept of tight living spaces. Her hair was perfectly curled, her nails fresh, her coat an expensive beige trench that screamed upper-class boredom. She looked like she belonged in a department store ad, not in my $1,200 shoebox with creaky floors and a window AC that screamed like an exorcism every night. "Okay," I breathed. "Explain. Now." She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in what felt like years. "You're trending," she said. "Half the town is talking about you. Mom called me crying. Dad's been pacing the house. And Ethan," she paused, "Ethan is losing his mind." My stomach twisted. "Why would Ethan care?" "Because you made him look bad," she snapped. "You made him look like the guy who abandoned his pregnant wife, which he did, but he didn't think you'd broadcast it to millions of people. I never said his name. You didn't need to. Everybody knows who you were married to." I swallowed hard. "So you came all the way to New York to, what, lecture me? Police me? Make me delete my posts?" "No," she said quietly. "I came because he's coming." My heart stuttered. "Coming? Where?" "Here." "When?" "Tonight." I nearly dropped to the floor. "How does he even know my address?" You put snippets of your apartment in your videos, she said, rubbing her temples. He recognized the street. He still has family here, remember? He made a few calls, and then he called me. He said he's ready to be a father again, and that he deserves to tell his side of the story. My blood ran cold. Tell his side to who? She didn't speak. Elle, I said, stepping closer. To who? To the internet? To your followers? No, I said instantly. No.
Fine, Ethan said through the door, his voice low, steady, too calm for a man who'd abandoned his family. If you won't talk to us, I'll just tell the truth myself. I froze. Truth? Ethan didn't know the definition of the damn word, but then he said something, one line that cracked my entire body like glass. I'll tell everyone why I really left you. My lungs stopped working. Elle stiffened beside me, clutching Ava tighter. I swallowed the tremor in my voice and called out, You left because you wanted to, because you cheated, because you didn't want a kid. His fiancée, her name was Marissa, I finally remembered, laughed sweetly, that fake influencer laugh that sounded like it was purchased. Oh, honey, she called out, that's the version you told people? I felt heat rush to my cheeks, a mix of anger and disbelief. It's the truth. No, Ethan said slowly, the truth is, you're unstable, Nia. I saw red. Not pink, not blush, red. Unstable? I growled. You left me 7 months pregnant. You blocked my number for weeks. You had a breakdown, he cut me off calmly, almost clinically. You scared me. You scared my family. You scared yourself, remember? I blinked. What the hell are you talking about? You threw things, he continued. You screamed for hours. You said you didn't want the baby. You said she'd be better off without you. The room spun. My ears rang, because that never happened, not one word of it. But he wasn't crafting a lie for fun. Oh no, he was crafting a strategy, a narrative, a legal case. Unstable mother equals custody risk, and he knew exactly where to aim. Ethan, I snarled, if you keep lying like that, I swear to God. I have witnesses, he said. My heart dropped. Witnesses? Your family, he said smugly. Your mother, your father, even your aunt. They all saw how you acted when you were pregnant. I went silent. Elle's face drained of color. Ethan continued, his tone casual like he was discussing brunch plans. They told me everything, babe. Everything. The betrayal hit like a blade to the ribs. My family, my own blood. They didn't support me. They didn't hug me when Ethan left. They didn't defend me online. But I never, ever thought they'd go as far as helping him rewrite history. I felt my knees weaken. Elle? Is he lying? Her eyes filled instantly. Nia. They didn't know better. They didn't understand. My throat closed. Tell me the truth. She winced like the truth hurt physically. Mom said you cried a lot. You were overwhelmed. She told Ethan you were emotional because she thought it would make him come home. I felt sick. Elle rushed to add, she didn't mean it like that. She didn't think he'd twist it into this. Oh, he absolutely meant to twist it, I spat. He's been holding on to that little detail like ammunition. I pressed my forehead to the doorframe and exhaled shakily. Ethan knocked again, gentle, polite, like a psychopath greeting a neighbor. Nia, he said softly, let me in. We can talk like adults. My voice dropped to a deadly calm. I don't talk to liars. You're a liar, he snapped, veneer cracking. You're lying to millions of people. They think you're some strong single mom who rose from the ashes. I am, I whispered. No, you're not, he barked. You're a mess. You're a mentally unstable woman who can't handle responsibility. I laughed, a brittle, humorless sound. So you want custody now? After disappearing? After abandoning your pregnant wife? After blocking me when I was in labor? You didn't tell me you were in labor. You blocked me. He raised his voice. I blocked you because you were threatening me. You said you'd ruin my life. You said you'd expose me. I was begging you to come home. Well, he hissed, you should have begged nicer. My entire body shook. That was Ethan. That was who he was. Arrogant, manipulative, a narcissist who needed control like oxygen. And now he was going for the jugular, public image and parental rights.
I felt Ava stir in Elle's arms, her tiny whimper cutting through the chaos. My daughter, my world, my reason. I straightened, spine snapping tall. Elle, I whispered, hand her to me. She hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. I took Ava gently, holding her close, feeling her warmth ground me. Ethan must have heard the shift in movement because he spoke again, voice syrupy. Let me see her. No. She's my daughter. You didn't want her, I snapped. You told me, verbatim, you weren't built for fatherhood and you'd rather start fresh with someone else. Marissa's voice slithered through the door next. That was before he met me. I burst out laughing. And you think that makes him father material? She hummed smugly. We'll give her a better life than you can. I saw black for a second. Get away from my door. No, Ethan replied. I'm calling the cops. Do it, I dared. I'll tell them you're unhinged and refusing visitation. You legally signed away rights. He chuckled, dark. You think paperwork can't be undone? You think money can't fix everything? You're naive, Nia. You always were. My hands shook. I pressed my forehead to Ava's forehead. I didn't care if Ethan had money. I didn't care if his fiancé had a family of political puppeteers. I didn't care about the fake witnesses. I didn't care about the lies. Because I had something he did not. The truth, the audience, in a rising platform strong enough to I didn't realize how much New York had changed me until the night I walked into the Marcellus Gala. One of those events where the champagne is older than the guests and everyone pretends their secrets aren't spilling out from the seams of their designer gowns. I'd been invited as a featured digital icon, whatever the hell that meant, but the second I stepped onto the marble staircase, I knew exactly what it meant. I was being watched, admired, evaluated, feared a little. I could feel it in the way conversations dipped whenever I walked past, the way some women narrowed their eyes like they were measuring my net worth, my followers, my relevance. Like they were wondering how the girl with vitiligo had become the woman who could stand under a chandelier worth more than her hometown and look like she belonged there. But I wasn't thinking about them. Not really. I was thinking about the text I had received earlier that afternoon from my ex-husband. We need to talk about Luca. Call me. I didn't respond. He lost the right to anything, the day he walked out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That night, I wore a champagne-colored silk dress that dripped off me like liquid light. My vitiligo patches stretched across my collarbone like a constellation. Intentional. Beautiful. Photographed every 5 seconds. I had become the brand, the message, the walking middle finger to everyone who told me as a kid that my skin was a curse. Funny how curses can turn into currency. Inside the ballroom, the music swelled, the cameras flashed, and the New York elite floated through the room like they were born in chandeliers. I smiled, posed, clinked glasses, pretended the world didn't feel like it was shifting under my feet. Then he walked in. Elias Marcellus, luxury real estate royalty, tech investor, philanthropist when cameras were around, and the man whose name had recently been tied to mine in about 7 different gossip blogs, even though we'd only met twice. But paparazzi don't care about truth. They care about angles, lighting, and the way he looked at me like he was trying to decide whether I was a business opportunity or a sin. Tonight, he looked at me with something else entirely. Well, he said when he approached me, looks like you're stealing the event. Good, I said, raising my glass. Your parents owe me for that incident with the PR hit piece. He laughed, the type of low, rich sound that could make a nun blush. Ah, yes. The reporter who tried to claim your skin was edited for sympathy engagement. My mother almost set the building on fire. I almost did too, but your mom beat me by 5 minutes. He smiled, but there was something tight in his expression, like he wasn't quite himself. And before I could decode it, a swarm of photographers descended. We posed, lights flashing in strobes, my hand resting lightly on his arm, the crowd whispering behind us. I heard snippets, are they dating? She's way too good for him. He's obsessed with her. She's going to dethrone half these influencers. I pretended I didn't hear a damn thing, but the whispers filled me with that dangerous cocktail of adrenaline and purpose. Then someone tapped my shoulder. I turned, and my heart dropped into my heels. It was my ex-husband. The man who left me when I was 5 months pregnant. The man who said my vitiligo made him feel embarrassed in public. The man who took my savings and used them to buy an engagement ring for the woman he cheated on me with. But worst of all, he looked at me like he was the wronged one. "Can we talk?" he said, trying to keep his voice low but failing. Elias's jaw flexed. He noticed. "No," I said, simply. "We can't. It's about Luca." My entire body went cold. Elias stepped slightly closer, positioning himself like a shield without touching me. "Is this man bothering you?" he asked, voice smooth but edged with steel. My ex laughed. "Oh, this must be your new sugar daddy." Elias didn't react, but something in the air snapped. Cameras swung toward us like guided missiles. I wanted to scream, punch, run, something. But I didn't. I inhaled, steadied my breath, and let the years of humiliation, abandonment, financial betrayal, and heartbreak sharpen into one icy blade. I told him, "Say whatever you have to say, fast." He looked around, annoyed we weren't somewhere private. "I want custody." The world stopped. I blinked once, twice, like my brain was glitching. "Come again?" "Joint custody," he corrected. "I've been thinking about it a lot. I want to be in my son's life. I'm engaged now. The wedding's in March, and we want stability, a family, a clean start." A clean start? My voice cracked, not from sadness, from something darker. "You left me. Do you remember that? You left me with nothing." He smirked. "You're clearly fine now." That was it. That was the spark. I stepped closer, my voice low enough that only he and Elias could hear. "You don't want Luca. You want my image, my brand. You want people to see you as a redeemed father. You want to shine off my spotlight because you're—"
I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. My mind kept looping that voicemail, her voice sharp enough to cut skin, warning me that my ex wasn't the real threat. I kept hearing her emphasis on the word "you," like she knew something about my life, my safety, my son. And then the break-in. God, I can still feel how my stomach dropped when I walked into my apartment and saw the front door just slightly off the latch. Not broken, not kicked in, picked. Whoever it was had skill, intention, and the kind of calm that terrified me more than rage ever could. The cops showed up 20 minutes after I called, and I swear they acted like I'd interrupted them at a bar on their night off. "Ma'am, are you sure you didn't misplace the photo? Ma'am, maybe your babysitter moved it. Ma'am, it doesn't look like anything valuable was taken." I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab the nearest officer by the collar and shake him until he understood that the picture stolen wasn't just any picture. It was the only printed photo of me and Luca after he was born, the one the hospital photographer had snapped when I was too exhausted to care about angles or makeup or lighting, the one where I'm half crying and half smiling, and Luca's tiny hand is curled around my finger like he's claiming me as his whole world. That picture was pinned to the corkboard above my desk. It had no monetary value. It wasn't something a burglar would even notice, let alone take, which is exactly why its disappearance was the loudest warning I'd ever gotten. Elias arrived before the cops even finished their "Are you sure this isn't just mommy brain?" lecture. He walked in wearing a navy coat, jaw clenched, eyes scanning every corner like he'd trained for this his whole life. Even the cops straightened up when they recognized him, because yes, when your family has a building named after them and enough political friends to fill Congress, even NYPD suddenly remembers how to act professional. "What do we know?" Elias asked them, voice steady but coiled, like he was barely holding back something darker. "Forced entry, fingerprints, footage." The cops stumbled over their words, suddenly very aware that they couldn't half-ass this anymore. I didn't care about the power shift. I cared that someone had been in the same room where my son plays with his stuffed dinosaurs. I cared that someone had touched the walls, the furniture, the photos, the memories that belonged to us. I cared that someone felt comfortable enough, confident enough to walk into my home without fear of consequences. "We'll file the report," one of the officers finally said, scribbling something that looked suspiciously like a doodle instead of notes. "But nothing indicates immediate danger."
The second they left, Elias turned to me, and I swear the fear I'd been holding in broke open. It was targeted, I whispered. They didn't take jewelry, money, electronics, nothing. Just the one thing that would make me feel unsafe. Someone wanted me to know they were here. Elias didn't interrupt. He just stepped closer and rested his hand on my shoulder, grounding me like an anchor. "You're not staying here tonight." "I'm not running," I said instantly. "I'm not asking you to run." His voice softened. "I'm asking you to be smart. I have Luca. Exactly why I'm suggesting it." And that was the thing. He didn't say it like a man trying to control me. He said it like a man who understood what it meant to protect something fragile, something irreplaceable. I hated that my knees actually weakened. I hated that I felt safer around him than I'd ever felt around my own husband, ex-husband, whatever. But I hated even more that a stranger, someone hidden behind warnings and break-ins, had now inserted themselves into the most vulnerable part of my life. I packed a bag for Luca and a bag for myself, but the whole time I felt like someone was watching me. Like there were eyes behind every dark corner, every cracked door, every shadow. Elias waited at the doorway, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. When we walked out, he didn't let me carry a single thing. He loaded everything into the back of his black SUV. Yes, the kind with tinted windows, dark enough to hide a dozen criminals or a whole mafia council meeting. Paranoid? Maybe. But at this point, paranoia felt like preparation. When I buckled Luca's empty car seat into the middle row, my chest tightened. He was at my nanny's house tonight, sleeping with zero idea that someone had just turned his home into a crime scene. Thank God. We drove to the Marcellus penthouse in Lower Manhattan, the kind of building that had security so advanced it felt borderline illegal. The doorman greeted Elias by name. The elevator required fingerprint and retinal scanning, and by the time we reached the 72nd floor, I felt an exhaustion heavy enough to crush my bones. I didn't belong in this world of marble, glass, and rooftops that looked like magazine covers. And yet, I felt safer there than I'd had in months, maybe years. The moment we entered, a woman in her 50s stepped out from the hallway, sharp bob, black blazer, eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Vale," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Rena, head of security." "Security?" I echoed. Elias shot me a look just bordering on apology. "I might have made a few calls." "You hired security?" "Technically, she's been on staff for years, but she's assigned to you now." "Elias, I can't." "You can, and you will." The firmness in his voice sent a strange shiver through me. Not fear, not anger, something else, something dangerously close to trust. Rena escorted me through a quick walkthrough, panic buttons hidden in corners, soundproof windows, cameras covering every possible angle. "Whoever broke in won't get near you again. Not here." I nodded, but my stomach stayed knotted, because safety in a fortress still doesn't erase the fear that creeps into your bloodstream. Elias showed me to the guest suite, which was bigger than my entire apartment. The bed looked like something stolen from a billionaire's dream. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city in a way that made the world feel small, manageable, conquerable. He said you can stay here as long as you need. A night, a week, a month. "Thank you," I whispered. I don't know what else to say." "You don't have to." For a moment, we just stood there, the city glowing between us. It wasn't romantic, not yet. It wasn't even flirting. It was something heavier, something that felt like two people quietly acknowledging they were now tied together by danger, by protection, by something neither of us fully understood yet. When he left, I collapsed on the bed, but sleep refused to come. Instead, I watched the nanny cam app to watch Luca sleeping peacefully, clutching his teddy bear. I cried silently, because this world, this chaos, this war that seemed to be building around me, he didn't deserve any of it. Around 3 a.m, a message pinged on my phone. Blocked number. Again. "He owes money."
The morning my lawyer called, I felt like the world had shifted beneath my feet, like a skyscraper of stress and trauma had been lifted, brick by brick, only to reveal a deeper foundation of danger. My ex-husband had officially filed for full custody, not joint, not partial, full. Every single word he typed into that court filing was like a dagger aimed straight at my heart, calculated, precise, and designed to devastate. But the shock wasn't the filing itself. It was what it implied. He wasn't done. He never had been. He'd been waiting, scheming, and now he had the law on his side. Or at least that's what he hoped. I sat in Elias's penthouse living room, Luca asleep in his portable bassinet, sunlight spilling over his tiny face like a halo, and I realized that the fight wasn't just about custody. It was about my life, my identity, my dignity. Everything I had fought to rebuild since the day Ethan left, since the day I accepted my skin, since the day I decided that vitiligo didn't make me less, it made me more. It made me unforgettable. Elias poured 2 coffees, slid one across to me, and sat opposite. He didn't speak immediately, just watched me hold the phone like it was a grenade. Finally, he said, "He's going to play dirty." "No kidding," I muttered. "He's already trying, and the courts aren't exactly on my side yet." "Which is why we're not waiting for them," Elias said. "You're not doing this alone anymore, and neither is Luca." I exhaled sharply, letting the tension in my shoulders loosen just slightly. I wanted to be angry, terrified, vindictive, smart, everything at once. But mostly I wanted control. And for the first time in months, I felt like I might have it. We started strategizing immediately. My lawyer, a woman named Simone Leclerc, who smelled like leather and ambition, called in via video chat. Her face appeared on my tablet, sharp as a blade, voice full of authority. "Nia, here's what's happening. Ethan has filed for full custody citing emotional instability during your pregnancy and postpartum. He's using selective family testimony and your online activity to paint a picture of neglect. And," she paused, letting the weight settle in my chest, "he has leverage through some people who believe they can profit from him or hurt you. It's complicated, but not unbeatable." I swallowed. Complicated? "Simone, he's been gone for months. He abandoned me. I had to raise Luca with 0 support. How is that not negligence?" Simone's eyes flicked to Elias before returning to mine. "Legally, past neglect doesn't always prevent custody if he can argue he's the more stable parent now. But here's the thing, he underestimated you. He thinks you're just a social media personality. He thinks your fame makes you vulnerable. It doesn't. Not anymore. And we're going to use that. Your platform, your audience, your visibility, it all works in your favor. The trick is to control the narrative before he does." I felt that spark of that old fire, the one that made me take New York by storm, make strangers stop in the streets and whisper, make brands beg to collaborate. He thought my life was fragile. He thought my skin, my single motherhood, my past trauma would make me crumble. He was dead wrong. Over the next week, we executed a meticulous plan. Every post, every photo, every story was curated to show me as the devoted, confident mother I was. Luca laughing in the park, Luca learning to walk, me cooking, reading, playing. Not the filtered perfection of Instagram, but real moments captured beautifully. We strategically leaked photos and stories of Ethan's absence, showing not only his abandonment, but the lengths he went to erase his presence from our lives. Every lawyer I spoke with advised caution, but Simone and Elias insisted that transparency and control of the narrative was our strongest weapon. And so I wielded it like a sword. My social media exploded. Posts tagged by friends, coverage by small online magazines, then national outlets. People were rallying behind me. The narrative was clear. Single mother, abandoned by father, overcoming adversity, raising child with resilience and love. And in the midst of this, my personal life tangled with the professional. Elias was always there, not intrusive, but present. Luca adored him immediately, climbing into his lap, babbling excitedly whenever Elias walked into the room. I couldn't deny the ease that settled in my chest whenever he held him. It was terrifying, addictive, and slightly disorienting to realize that someone else could care so much about us both without agenda. Then came the day of the first mediation session. The courthouse smelled like disinfectant and tension, like every high-stakes argument that had ever happened within these walls.
Ethan arrived, looking like he hadn't aged a day since leaving, perfectly dressed, smug, confident. Marissa flanked him, holding herself like a living Instagram post. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with eyes that missed nothing, reviewed the files. We sat in the mediation room, Luca safe at my nanny's, while Ethan made claims that could make a lesser woman weep. Emotional instability, neglect, lack of financial security, unpredictability. I sat across from him, calm, every muscle taut with controlled fury. Elias's hand brushed mine briefly under the table, grounding me. "He's going to play dirty," I said. I was born ready. Simone began. Step by step, she dismantled his narrative. Evidence of his absence, witness testimony showing I was a competent, caring mother, my audience's visible support online, carefully documented, emails, messages, photos, videos, everything. Every lie he told was countered with truth, every manipulation mirrored with proof. And slowly, I could see it in his eyes, the confidence that had carried him this far, the arrogance that had made him think he could walk back into my life, crumble. And then came the bombshell, something I hadn't even expected. My mother testimony. Initially, I feared she'd side with him. I feared the betrayal would hurt more than the years of trauma already had. But Simone had worked magic. My mother admitted to exaggerating some things to Ethan months ago, thinking it would protect him, thinking she was helping. It was a calculated disaster, but she recanted every misleading statement in front of the mediator. I felt the weight lift from my chest as the truth finally outshone the lies. Ethan was visibly seething, his smug mask cracking, and when the mediator leaned back, she said something that made my heart soar and my pulse race. "Ms. Val, your commitment to your child is evident. Your ex's absence and attempts to manipulate the narrative have been noted. I strongly advise both parties to reach an amicable arrangement, but your dedication cannot be ignored." It wasn't a final victory, but it was a start. The pressure on Ethan escalated as media coverage highlighted the disparity between his claims and reality. My posts, carefully orchestrated with Elias and Simone, drew attention from journalists and commentators who championed parental responsibility. Suddenly, he wasn't the victim anymore. He was the man who abandoned his family and tried to rewrite history. Then came the night he showed up outside my building. Not at the gala, not with cameras, not with lawyers. Alone, in a dark hoodie, looking desperate. Rena and her team intercepted him, but the audacity of his appearance made my blood boil. I stepped out onto the balcony, Luca asleep inside, heart hammering, and faced him. "Ethan," I said, voice clear and cutting through the night air, "this stops now. You do not touch my child. You do not manipulate the courts. You do not lie to the world." He tried to argue, tried to charm, tried to guilt, but every word bounced off my armor of truth, resilience, and reputation. And then came the final move, the one that sealed my victory. Simone had uncovered that Ethan owed money to powerful people, people who didn't want their names attached, but were desperate to collect. Evidence of illegal dealings, shady agreements, financial manipulations, proof that would not only destroy his credibility, but potentially land him in jail. Overnight, our team strategically released anonymous tips to the authorities and media outlets that oversaw corporate fraud. By morning, Ethan's credibility had imploded. Custody filings were frozen pending investigation. His social image was decimated. And while he scrambled to save himself, I stood on my balcony with Luca in my arms, feeling more powerful than I ever had in my entire life. I cried, not from fear, not from anger, not from trauma, but from release, from vindication, from the knowledge that I had fought every lie, every betrayal, every judgment, every cruel whisper about my skin, my worth, my strength, and I had won. Elias stood behind me, hand on my shoulder, eyes on mine. "You did this," he said softly. "We did this," I corrected. Because the truth is, even the strongest people don't fight alone. Not